Dan here at Roseum Maple Syrup. Today I'm going to give you a little tour of our small-scale sugaring operation. We're going to show you exactly how we take the sap from our trees and turn it into maple syrup that ends up on your table. So come with me and I'll show you where it all starts. Okay, this is where it all starts. This is where we get the sap from the trees. We tap two different species of maple trees here in our sugar bush. We tap red maples like this guy and sugar maples like the tree over there on the far left hand side. We use 3/16 tubing on vacuum to help extract the sap from the trees. And you can see the little bubbles and sap flowing downhill to our collection tank. The sap's just starting to run today as we're just coming up above freezing. But why don't you come over here and I'm going to show you how it looks. You can see the sap coming from the trees going through the tubing. This is what's called a spile. This is what goes into the hole that you drill when you tap a tree. We use check valve spiles. It has a little ball inside. So when the sap flows out, it can't flow back in when the tree freezes. That actually helps us prolong our maple syrup season, and you don't get contamination back into the tap hole, which causes the tap hole to heal and close off all the ability to provide sap to us. You get different rates of flow of sap depending upon the tree, the time of year, the temperatures, as well as the vacuum level. But we always need a freeze and thaw cycle to be able to help the tree produce sap and release it to us. This tree here is flowing pretty slow as it's later in the season and just warming up on a day that was pretty cold overnight. Whereas another tree on a warmer day under higher vacuums earlier in the season can flow as fast as this. All right, so all that sap that's coming from our trees that are in our sugar bush come downhill in these tubes. Again, these are 3/16 tubes. We've got about 100 trees that are hooked to these tubes that are coming down, and we use a vacuum pump inside here to help pull that sap. For every inch of vacuum that you can put on the tap hole, you're going to gain an additional 5 to 7% sap yield. So we're sitting at about 25 inches of mercury, which means we're actually going to end up more than doubling the sap yield that we would get if we didn't have the vacuum pump. Okay, from the vacuum pump, that comes right over here into this large collection tank. And you can come over here and see the sap coming in right now. Like I mentioned, it's just starting to run. You can see it just starting to drip in from all of our tubing lines there. It can take anywhere from 40 to 80 gallons of sap to make just 1 gallon of maple syrup. That all depends upon how much sugar concentration is in the sap, and that depends upon your trees as well as the weather and what point in the season you're at. Early on, the sugar concentration is higher. Later in the season, it gets lower. And also, sugar maples tend to have a little bit higher sugar concentration naturally in their sap than red maples do. And then from here, we're going to take this sap and we're going to run it through a process called reverse osmosis. And that reverse osmosis process takes out some of the water before we start to boil. So taking all that water out via reverse osmosis is a big time saver so that we can take those 80 gallons and make it into 1 gallon of syrup. Now I'll show you those ROs. Okay, over here in our shed we've got our reverse osmosis machines. These help take the water out of the sap before you ever even have to boil it. We're able to take out more than half of the water so that we cut down on our boiling time and use of fuel. There's two things that come out of these reverse osmosis machines. One is pure water called permeate, and the other is the highly concentrated sugar water, or the sap, called concentrate. We take our sap up to about 6% concentrate before boiling it, and we store all the permeate in tanks so that we can use it to clean our equipment and wash out the ROs at the end of the night. Okay, the next stop on our tour is where our sap goes after it goes through our reverse osmosis machine. That concentrate's going to come in here into this back feed tank. This is where that sap starts to get preheated before it feeds down here into our flue pan. Okay, a flue pan, if you come over here, I'll show you, has deep channels in it, and that helps get more heat into the sap and boil it faster. You can see those channels down in the flue pan there, and that's what causes that extra heat to be able to get into the sap and boil it even faster. From the flue pan, that comes up in here into what we call our syrup pan, and it creates a gradient. Okay, we're getting more and more dense and a little darker color as we go. When we get all the way over here where we're going to draw off, that's our finished syrup. And then we're going to take that, filter it, bottle it, and deliver it to you. We're going to draw off over here today from this front channel. Yesterday we were drawing off back here. We swapped everything around. This is our auto draw off system. So when it reaches the proper temperature, we've got a little temperature probe up here. It will open up this valve and just dump some syrup off automatically for us in our pot. We maintain the proper depth of sap in our pan using something called a float box. This is a sight tube that tells you how much sap we've got in there. It's a little low right now because of our boil last night. We haven't started to refill our pan this morning. Over here you can see this controls, there's a valve that controls how much sap gets fed from this feed tank down into our flue pan, and it keeps it at a constant depth the entire time. So it boils at an even rate and we can create that gradient. Inside, the way a float works, when you push down or when the water level drops, more fluid comes in. This float box, we flip to the other side every day. That way we reverse the flow of sap through our pan. That helps prevent niter or sugar sand, which are the little minerals that precipitate out when you're boiling the sap, from building up too heavily on the surface of your pan. Keeps things nice and clean for us. Now we've got the evaporator fired up and boiling. We're bringing it up to temperature and getting to the right density. We have a target of 66.9 bricks that we're looking to achieve. We always check that with a hydrometer, and we're going to filter it through our filter press and then bottle it. Okay, now you know how we get the sap from our trees turned into maple syrup that gets delivered to your table. I appreciate you stopping by for this small tour of our sugaring operation, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks again.